There are, in the world, usually people that have one of two skill sets. People who have really great ideas and people who like to implement them. Very rarely do you see someone that likes to do both.
People used to always say to me, well, let's think out of the box. No, there is no box.
Hi, I'm Karen Gilhooly, host of Make Minutes Matter podcast. And today, my guest is the one and only Lou Provenzano, former CEO of several different companies and a person very much engaged in the investment community and private equity today. Lou has got some very interesting things to talk to us about. So thank you, Lou, for being with us today.
My pleasure, Karen. Great to see you.
Yes. So Lou, we have such a beautiful and long history together. And I thought maybe we would start by just recognizing the fact that the reason that you and I know each other is because of your beautiful ability to think differently. Honestly, out of all the people that I've ever met in my life, you are someone who really knows how to take an idea, create the magic, create the visualization of what it's supposed to be, and then put it forward for execution. So, are you okay if we talk a little bit about how we met?
I'd be happy to. It's a great story.
Yes, it is a great story. So, as you'll remember, we were both in the payments industry at the time. And we were both talking to a firm in the beautiful Midwest, the heart of Dairyland, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Brown Deer to be exact. And
Cheese town.
And I was being interviewed and heavily recruited to take on a sales leadership role for this firm that was looking to really transform its sales team into the next level. And I had gone through, probably a 6 to 8 month interview process where I met almost everybody in the firm other than the janitor. And I finally received the offer letter from the firm. And the next morning, I get a phone call that says that they've changed their mind and they're going to go with a different candidate. Now, you didn't know this side of the story, Lou, but this is my side now. So you can hear your side in a few minutes. I couldn't believe it. I had an offer letter in my hand. And here's the hiring manager calling me to say, well, the 11th hour, we found someone better. And I said, you found someone better? Yes, I'm sorry, Karen, but we're going to have to go with this candidate. I said, who is this guy? Assuming that it's a guy. Yes, it's a guy. His name is Lou Provenzano. I couldn't believe it. So for a whole year, Lou, I really hated your guts. And then a year went by, and I got a phone call from that same manager who said, Lou's doing some really great stuff, but he needs a sidekick. And we're thinking maybe you might be interested in coming over here to join him. And I was so turned off by that conversation, I couldn't believe it. I said, well, if I'm even going to remotely consider this opportunity, I want to meet this guy. And so that's how we met. So now I want you to share your perspective. And the reason we're telling this story is that I think in the world, lots of things happen that are unexpected. People receive job offers every day. They are rescinded sometimes before the offer takes place. This is one of those circumstances. So I'd like you to share your story on how this all came about. How did you steal my job, Lou?
I wouldn't exactly say I stole it. I just did a couple of unique things that you didn't do.
This is true.
And I also had a several-month process. I did meet the janitor, and I think that was probably the mistake you made.
The key point.
That was the mistake you made. But I really did have a serious sort of issue, a number of issues to consider, not the least of which is, my family were pretty ill at the time. My mom has since passed. A number of sort of family tragedies, and really couldn't leave Manhattan. And this was a position that, as you know, was based in Milwaukee. So it was really trying to sell myself on, if you feel that I have the value to turn the organization around. And that has always been, as you know, my sort of specialty. Lots of different startups. I think I've got about just almost a dozen under my belt. Turnarounds, the Rockefeller Foundation early on, sold it to Reuters. Just really fun stuff where people needed to essentially rewrite the organization. And so once we got over the sort of the financial negotiation part, that I would be able to keep my place in Manhattan, but because, as you know, there were a lot of operations for the company in New York, and just be able to do what I needed to do in Milwaukee. We were running an organization that required us to be on an airplane anyway for all of our customers, so it was almost 100% travel. I walked into this situation and started hearing about this Karen Gilhooly. And when I met everybody that you met and got to know them really very well, it was pretty obvious to me that the decision tree went down. Lou's got some really interesting ideas, but Karen seems like she's a great executor. And what more do you want with that sort of team together, where you're building a team with great ideas to propel it to the next level, but you build a team to make sure you executed exactly what that vision is. And so I heard an awful lot about you, and then I knew when you walked in, it was sort of like when Margaret Thatcher used to say, I can determine whether I'm going to like somebody or not somebody in 10 seconds. I not only knew that I would like you, I knew that I would love you and that we would have the relationship that we do.
And when we finally did meet, that second round, so to speak, and talking with you about what you had done with the team, what you had done for the organization, just the ideas that you had, I was really blown away. I remember leaving that meeting, which was scheduled for 45 minutes, if you'll recall, and we were still going at it after 3 hours. And in fact, we got thrown out of the conference room because somebody needed it. And so we agreed that we would continue forward in the conversation. I remember driving back to Chicago in the car. I spoke with my husband. He goes, so did you meet this guy? And I said, yes. He goes, what'd you think? I said, I understand why I didn't get the job. I understand it. I understand that now. And I didn't understand it then. And I think there are two things that I took away from this. First of all, is that there are, in the world, usually people that have one of two skill sets. People who have really great ideas and people who like to implement them. Very rarely do you see someone that likes to do both. Right. I'm not saying that those people don't exist, but for the most part, I think you can find it this way. And when you, for someone who loves to execute, like I do, is paired up with someone who's got great, beautiful, big ideas, it's such a beautiful relationship. It really is. So we've had some really fun times together. We
created a tremendous amount of magic.
We did.
That showed in the valuation of the companies that we sold or were part of, and the lives that we changed for so many people that worked for us, that went on to do things on their own because they had the confidence. They had seen what a good, solid team does. And I think most importantly, I think we recognize that there are certain skill sets that everybody brings to the table. And if we knew and we had this vision of what it was going to take to create that magic and go and bring those people to the family, if you will, then they're going to want to talk about their successes, and they're going to want to bring their colleagues and friends and others to the family. And then all of a sudden, what started off, I think we were running a team of maybe 50 people roughly when we first started. And then I think when I left to go to Language Line, I think the team was well over 300, 400 people.
Yeah, it was large.
And that's just the sales staff.
Right.
That wasn't the professional people behind the scenes that were doing all the magic that they do, with the software and so forth. But I mean, it was a sleeping giant that just needed a lot of love and attention and really jumping up and down for resources to get what it is that you believe you need in order to make it such a great success. I remember one of the deals that we were working on, you remember this deal very, very well. We had just a vicious competitor out there, and to be nice to the company, they were eating our lunch over and over and over again. I said, I don't like my lunch being eaten.
Yes.
So we have to do like a deep strategic discussion of all of our strengths, all of our weaknesses. We have to map this out in 3D dimensional chess. We have to play this as if it is a war, and we are going to win. And we had to fight not only with the team that was just coming into the company to learn the culture of a Milwaukee-based company, and I say that with all great memories in my heart.
Hey, and you know what? I'm from the Midwest, my friend. So
Yeah, but you're Chicago, you're not Milwaukee. There's a big difference. With that being said, we had a lot of people that we had to really get on our side. And when we decided and knew that, okay, the only way to get this one deal that we were working on, we had to get the client from Dallas up to the payment center up in Toronto. We had to clear customs. I mean, how do we do all this when we know that the opposing competitor is literally, probably 3 hours ahead of us because they've been thinking about this. I believe they were the incumbent. And so we really had to be absolutely 10 steps ahead. So somebody came up with the idea, well, the company has 2 corporate jets. We can go and ask for the jet so we can take these people from Dallas up to Toronto, from Toronto to Milwaukee. We can do it all in a day, and I'm sure the chairman will say yes. Well, I remember everybody looking at, well, who's going to have the nerve to ask the chairman for that?
I remember I was at that meeting.
And our division president said, well, I'll make the call, but I'm not going down there. So I just remember, okay, well, I'm going down to bank headquarters and I'm going to go. And this gentleman is very, very gracious. He was, I think, Jesuit trained, so a little bit of my Jesuit background said, all right, he's busy. You've got just one shot at this. Just bullet point it. Tell him why, how much he's going to make, and when you need it by. Those are the things that we did. So by the time I got back to up north where we were, the okay was there for the jet, and we went up and took the client, and by the way, won that deal to a tune of something like, what was it, like $50, $100 million?
Yeah, it was a big one. It was a big one.
And that put us on the map.
It did.
And it was that creativity, and it was that willingness to, people used to always say to me, well, let's think out of the box. No, there is no box. There is no box. There is no box.
Yeah. There's someone I'm working with now that likes to talk about the box and the fact that the box is really non-existent. The box is what you put inside your head. Right. And if you can release those walls, so to speak, you'll be far better in thinking about different solutions and that type of thing. And that's something that you've always done. You've always done that really, really well. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about related to this time, because the transformation was such a big piece of what we were doing at that firm, the team, the composite of that team was so important. Let's talk a little bit about the specialness of that group of people that was there, the folks that were on either side of you or me as we were trying to figure out what it is that we need to do differently.
I think it starts with a vision, which we clearly had after that one win. That literally put us on the map.
And it proved that we could do it.
Right.
Yes.
Not only to ourselves and management, but to the industry. I think our competitor was blown away. Like, how in Lord's name did they come up with this one? How did they do it? And I don't know whether it was just because it was the way I was raised, and I'm the oldest of the 3 children, and I was, for the most part, raised by my grandmother. My parents were working. They were very young. My mom had me when she was 16, 17, so, I had a lot of responsibilities. But it was always sort of with this philosophy of, okay, You didn't do 100%. What could we have done differently to correct it if we're given the chance the next time? And if you recall, in almost every place we've worked together, we did a full analysis of what went right when we won a deal. How did we win it? How did we differentiate ourselves? Who did the magic? Who did not do the magic? And this was really not only for our team that was on it, but how well did management do? How well did they support us? If it was that big of a deal for the company, then we expect the company and the resources that they have to give us that unencumbered so that we're in a position to win. And a lot of it is convincing people that you can win. Okay, now we have all the tools. Now we have all the magical people around us. Now we have literally the sight on the mission. What do we need to do step by step by step to get there? And little things. I remember just it was one of my pet peeves. It's not if we win the deal, it's when we win the deal. You know, refocus your mind, visualize it. It already has happened. Now just let it all parse out. It's happened already. When we were on that jet, to me, when we were landing, and I thought it was so cool that we landed in Canada and we got to go through customs, but customs came to us on the plane.
That's true.
When they opened up that door and the customs people asked us for our passports, we've won this deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like sort of like we thought so hard and strategically, and I think very thoughtful, and gamed out every single scenario in order to protect in the event that something, maybe there's another Karen Gilhooly at this company, at the competition. Maybe there's another group of crazy visionaries over at their competitive landslide that are outfoxing us. But you put the time in, you dress rehearse, you dress rehearse, you dress rehearse, and you become more and more confident. So to the point of the people that we had, it's almost as if the gentleman that was key on the deal, it was the largest deal he had ever, I mean, we assigned a deal to a salesperson. Sometimes it was a team, but for the most part, somebody was the senior salesperson. And of course, management supported the entire team. That was a game changer for that individual.
It was.
And for the family, because of the way we astutely, all these years, we astutely said, look, we want to build a significant company here that has massive shareholder value.
Yeah.
Shareholder value, not only for our investors and our shareholders, but for all the employees that had our stock in their pension, for all of us that were given not only stock, but options, and recognizing that, okay, if this is the game, if you will, and it's shareholder value, then we expect the returns to increase as more and more revenue and more profit, hopefully, follow, and you're compensated for it. So you remember the fun we used to have with these compensation grids that were like hockey sticks. And some of our, I'm going to call some of them children, some of them were really smart and figured it out. So you mean you want me to bring in $2 million in order for me to make $400,000? Now that's a significant amount of revenue based on an individual contributor's performance. But we said yes. And you have to believe that you can do it. Well, when this deal closed and that salesperson's going around to everybody at the bar and the cafeteria and talking to the janitor who you missed.
Right.
They're talking about, look, this is a game changer for me. This is a significant, I was worried about how I'm going to afford the university for my 4 kids and so forth. And to your point, life changes on a dime.
It does.
On a dime.
So just from thinking about all of that, and for anyone that's listening to our podcast that's in a sales or customer-facing role, I think there's a lot of things that you just mentioned that are easy to talk about, but sometimes can be very difficult to do. So the first thing that you talked about was this idea of doing the 3D planning. How many times have we sat in rooms, talked to different people that we were hiring and heard them talk about the fact that in their previous roles, that it was an aspiration, but it was never a reality. People who work for us understood that it was really important to do that planning, because without the planning, you don't really have an opportunity to understand the unforeseen things that are going to happen. And they always do when you're dealing with customers.
Right.
Because there's one consistent thing that you and I agree on, and there are many of them, but one thing is that customers are customers and they behave in very unusual ways. Give any customer an opportunity to go in the right direction. They're typically going to go in options B, C, and D. And if you're not prepared for that, then you lose. And that's a sad thing.
And one of the things that you were tremendous at was putting in detailed account plans for every major account and requiring the team to come and present to management on what their strategy was going to be to grow that account by 15%, 20%, or ensure that that account is maintained within the portfolio, right even down to the point, I remember these vividly, where you and the rest of the team would grill everybody, say, okay, so who is the person that's in charge of procurement in this hospital? And who do they report to? In other words, give me an entire layout of this organization. And then, because we had the technology at that time, I believe it was Salesforce that was coming onto the field, just sort of the same time as LinkedIn was, you would require everybody to put their background from the organization chart and tie it to the calls that they did at the hospital or the bank or the insurance company. In other words, if this person is so important, when was the last time you saw them? What did you talk about? And how did you offer the value for our relationship for the next contract period?
Yeah.
How did you articulate that? So for us, it was just an extension of 3D planning. It was an extension of, okay, we have to be on our A game every day.
Right.
We also have to recognize that, especially when you're doing what we would call RFPs, requests for proposals, mainly with the government agencies, the city agencies, you could perhaps have an advantage by offering the client that will write the RFP for you in hopes that they ask your questions, because you've just asked them what to ask the competition. So it does give you a bit of an advantage. But with an RFP, there's scoring points, and you've worked on so many government contracts, you never know what the final outcome is going to be. And the government is required, certainly in so many cases, it's best and final offer price point. So you've got to be competitive. You can have everything else tremendously going for you, but if you don't have a good seller price, you'll lose. But we did the same type of analysis on our wins as we did with every one of our losses.
Yes.
And we literally asked everybody to opine on, well, if we had this chance to go back, or when we do have a chance to go back, because typically it would be rebid in a year or two, what mistakes did we discover in the process, and what will we do differently? And then we corrected the model going forward. And I think one of the reasons why we were tremendously successful is because I'm a firm believer that success begets success.
Yeah.
And now we're no longer the small little scrappy turnaround company. Now we've got some national attention. Okay, Mr. CEO, now I need $3 million for a PR budget, and I need advertising dollars, and I need this. And I want everyone to know that the Gilhooly team is the #1 team in the industry. And then you go and you spend your resources like that. And it just became bigger and bigger and bigger.
So thank you for being a guest today. It was wonderful to have you
pleasure.
here. God bless.
God
If
bless.
someone wants to get in touch with you, Lou, I know you're a big Instagram guy. So tell us, where would they get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your story?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn?
Probably the best.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not on there as much, LinkedIn. And my email is lousprovenzano@gmail.com.
Okay, wonderful. We'll leave it at that. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Make Minutes Matter. If you haven't done so already, Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or click the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And let me know what you thought of today's conversation by following us on Instagram at Karen Gilhooly 1. That's Karen, Karen, Gilhooly, Gilhooly, and the number 1. Let's make every moment in your career truly matter. Have a great day.